What if the thing you do every single morning, the routine that makes you feel safe, productive, even healthy, is quietly destroying your brain? Not in 30 years, not gradually, right now, today, as you live it. Dementia researchers don't usually say alarming things publicly. They're careful people, measured, scientific. So when leading neurologists start using words like epidemic and preventable in the same sentence, you should probably stop and listen. Here's what most people never realize. The brain is not a passive organ. It's not just sitting there waiting for Alzheimer's to arrive someday. It's in a constant war between growth and decay. And every single day, the choices you make are choosing a side. Most people are choosing decay, without knowing it, without ever being told. The terrifying part isn't that people are making bad choices. The terrifying part is that they believe they're making good ones. And this is what makes this particular routine so dangerous. It doesn't feel harmful. It feels normal, familiar, comfortable. That's exactly how the most destructive things operate, in disguise. Have you ever stopped and genuinely asked yourself, am I living in a way that protects my mind? Keep watching, because the routine I'm about to describe is one most people defend, right until they understand what it's actually doing. Let me paint the picture. You wake up. You reach for your phone before your eyes have even fully adjusted to the light. You scroll. News, notifications, social media. Maybe you stay in bed for 20, 30, 40 minutes. Passive, reactive, absorbing. Then you make the same breakfast. Drive or commute the same route. Sit at the same desk. Do largely the same tasks. Come home. Watch the same kind of content. Go to sleep. Repeat. Neuroscientists have a name for this. They call it cognitive autopilot, and long-term exposure to it is one of the strongest predictors of early cognitive decline. This is where things become dangerous, not because any one of those habits is catastrophic on its own, but because together, day after day, they starve the brain of the very thing it needs most to stay sharp: novelty, challenge, deep, sustained attention. I want to tell you about a man named Robert. He was 61 years old, retired early, proud of it. He had built his whole post-retirement life around relaxation, what he called finally living, sleeping in, no schedules, television in the morning, golf 3 times a week, same course, same friends, same conversations. He was happy, genuinely content. His wife noticed it first. Small things. He'd forget where he put his keys. He'd lose the thread of a story he was telling. He'd repeat himself in conversation without realizing it. She chalked it up to age. By 64, the neurologist had a name for what was happening. His doctor told his wife something that stayed with her for years after. The brain retired before he did. Robert's story isn't unusual. It's becoming the norm. And the cruel irony is that the people most at risk are often the ones who believe they've earned their rest. Tell me if this has happened to someone you know. A parent, a relative, someone who seemed fine, and then wasn't. Nobody talks about this part, but the research is unambiguous. A landmark study following over 800,000 participants found that cognitive inactivity, a life lived on autopilot, with little mental challenge or social depth, dramatically accelerated the onset of dementia symptoms, not by months, by years, in some cases by more than a decade. Here's what makes that number stop you cold. We're not talking about people who were sedentary or unhealthy in the traditional sense. Many of them exercised, many of them ate reasonably well, but they had stopped, without realizing it, using their minds in ways that required real effort. The real problem begins when comfort becomes the primary goal of a life. Because the brain doesn't understand comfort as safety. It understands it as stagnation. And stagnation, to a brain, is the beginning of the end. But here's where the story shifts, because this is not a death sentence. And what neuroscience now understands about brain plasticity changes everything. The brain has a property that most of us were never properly taught about in school. It's called neuroplasticity, and it means, in the simplest terms, that the brain can rewire itself at any age, under the right conditions. The problem is that neuroplasticity requires one thing above all else. It requires you to make the brain uncomfortable. New skills, new routes, new conversations, new problems to solve, new perspectives to hold. Discomfort is not the enemy of a healthy brain. It is, quite literally, the mechanism of its survival. Every time you do something your brain has never done before, you are building infrastructure. You are laying cable that may one day save you. And this is what changes everything, because it means that the protection against cognitive decline isn't found in a pill or a supplement or an expensive program. It's found in the way you choose to live each ordinary day. Most people won't admit this, but how many of your last 30 days genuinely challenged your mind in a new way? There's another person I want you to hear about. Her name is Margaret. She's 79, and she is, by every clinical measure, cognitively sharp. Her memory is strong. Her reasoning is clear. She does crosswords, yes, but that's not why. She learned to paint at 71, not because she had talent. She had almost none, she'll tell you with a laugh. She learned because her therapist told her to do something that made her feel like a beginner. She started taking buses to parts of her city she'd never visited. She joined a debate club where she was the oldest person by 30 years. She began writing letters to strangers through a pen pal program. She told an interviewer once, "I stopped being comfortable on purpose. That was the best decision I ever made." Her neurologist calls her an outlier. She calls herself disciplined. The truth is probably somewhere in between, but the lesson isn't complicated. The brain you protect today is the one that will carry you through tomorrow. Let's talk specifically about what the brain-killing routine actually looks like, because I want you to be honest with yourself as I describe it. It starts with passive consumption the moment you wake up. Scrolling, watching, absorbing. All of it without your mind being asked to produce, solve, or create anything. The brain is a receiver, not a processor. That is the first damage of the day. Then there's social isolation, which doesn't always look like loneliness. It can look like a full social calendar where every conversation stays shallow. Work talk, weather talk, safe talk. The brain needs genuine intellectual social friction, disagreement, complexity, emotional depth. Without it, the circuits responsible for empathy and complex reasoning begin to thin. And then there is perhaps the most underrated threat of all, chronic low-grade stress combined with poor sleep. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is neurotoxic at sustained levels. It literally erodes the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for forming new memories. You can exercise daily, eat perfectly, and still accelerate your cognitive decline if you are chronically stressed and chronically underslept. Have you ever experienced a period of intense stress and noticed that your memory and focus suffered noticeably? You weren't imagining it. But knowing the damage isn't enough. What you actually need is a different way to think about your daily life. And that's exactly where this gets practical. Here's the thing that dementia researchers want people to understand more than anything else. The window of prevention is longer than almost anyone believes, and the changes that matter most are not dramatic. They are small, consistent, and deeply human. Learning something genuinely new, an instrument, a language, a craft, creates neural density, not because it makes you smarter in a measurable way, but because the process of struggling with novelty forces new synaptic connections into existence. Physical movement, particularly the kind that requires coordination and attention, like dancing, hiking on uneven terrain, or martial arts, activates the brain in ways that straight-line exercise simply cannot. Deep, uninterrupted conversations, the kind where you actually change your mind, or at least feel genuinely challenged, are more protective than almost any puzzle or brain training app on the market. And rest. Real rest. Not screen numbing, not passive scrolling, but genuine mental downtime. Walking without your phone, sitting with your thoughts, letting your mind wander. The default mode network, the system your brain uses to consolidate memory and build identity, only activates fully when you are doing nothing productive. Boredom, it turns out, might be one of the most brain-protective states a modern person can experience, if they're willing to tolerate it. And this is the part nobody wants to say out loud, but I will, because I think you need to hear it. Modern life has been specifically designed to keep your brain in its most passive, most reactive, least generative state. The algorithm doesn't want you thinking deeply. It wants you scrolling. The entertainment industry doesn't want you challenged. It wants you comfortable. The culture of productivity doesn't want you resting. It wants you optimizing. All of these forces, combined, create the perfect conditions for cognitive decline, wrapped in the packaging of convenience and modern living. You are not failing your brain by accident. You are being failed by a system that was never designed with your brain's long-term health in mind. Understanding that is not about blame. It's about taking back agency, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Most people won't admit this, but does any part of your daily life feel like it was designed to keep you passive? Tell me in the comments. I've thought about Robert often, the man whose brain retired before he did. I've thought about what he might have done differently if someone had told him earlier. Not to work harder, not to achieve more, just to stay curious, to keep asking questions, to remain, in some essential way, a beginner. There's a Japanese concept, ikigai, that translates loosely as a reason to get up in the morning. The populations in the world with the lowest rates of dementia are not the ones with the best healthcare or the most advanced medicine. They are the ones with the clearest sense of purpose, the ones who feel, at every age, that they are still needed, still learning, still becoming something. That is not a small thing. That is everything. The brain does not decline because it runs out of capacity. It declines when it runs out of reasons to stay alive. And that is something you have the power to change, not someday, not after retirement, not when things settle down. Now, today, in the smallest, most ordinary decisions of an ordinary Tuesday. So here is where I'll leave you. Not with a list, not with a 10-step program, but with a question. The kind I hope stays with you after this video ends and the screen goes dark. What did your brain do today that it has never done before? Not your body, not your career, not your relationships, though those matter too. Your brain, specifically, privately, quietly. What did it encounter today that made it work in a new way? If you can't answer that question, then tomorrow is an opportunity. And the day after that. And the day after that. The research is clear. The window is open. And the version of you that is 75 or 80 or 85, the one who still knows your children's names, still remembers the smell of a particular morning 30 years ago, still laughs at the right moments, and holds a conversation that goes somewhere real. That version of you is being built right now. Every choice you make today is a letter you're writing to your future self's mind. Write carefully. What is one thing you're going to do differently starting tomorrow? I read every comment. Tell me below. And if someone you love needs to hear this, share it with them. This might be the most important conversation they haven't had yet.